Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the Uighur genocide, and yes, I am pronouncing that correctly. I don't want to come off as facetious, however, I have seen some really stupid takes with regards to the situation in Xinjiang, ranging from denialism to justification for state violence inflicted upon ethnic minorities. I must preface this by saying that there is, in fact, no Holocaust style genocide. Yet. However, we must recognize that historical events just don't happen. I don't think anyone would say that the Holocaust began when the first mass graves were dug, and so too here. I've seen a lot of people comparing the narrative of the Uighur genocide to that of the Iraq War WMD's myth, despite the fact that the justification for the Iraq War was on much shakier grounds and there were multiple international organizations that were calling out the US's accusations. This is different as there are a plethora of eyewitness testimonies, bodies of academic works on the topic, alongside the dishonesty on the part of the Chinese state, like when they initially denied the existence of the camps, but later came out and saying that they were vocational schools. Also, there is no immediate interest to ever invade China, even on the part of the most hawkish of neocons, as war with China would make for mutually assured destruction. Mind you, China is a nuclear power and so is the United States. It would also lead to the destruction of most of the world's economy. If the United States wanted oil as much as a lot of people say that they do, they would just invade Canada. Canada's not that far from the United States. It wouldn't take too long to take over Alberta or something. Most of the antagonism that we see from right-wing media doesn't seem to be born out of a desire to invade China, but rather to serve as an external enemy for the far right to play into their fascist mythos. While I do allow for a healthy degree of skepticism with regards to the narratives usually espoused by corporate media, this is not it. Endless contrarianism from people like the Grey Zone is sometimes quite honestly disgusting, especially when they are defending the genocide of ethnic minorities. So, what is happening? From what we know so far, the Chinese government has been engaging in the persecution of a Turkic ethnic group called the Uyghurs, with methods such as aggressive policing and arbitrary detention in an attempt to sinicize their culture, with the excuse of cracking down on religious extremism. As China's economy continues to grow, they continue to require resources such as oil and coal. Xinjiang also serves as one of the main routes out of China for the Belt and Road Initiative. An independent state of Xinjiang would devastate the Chinese industrial sector, so the Chinese government has an interest in making sure that there is no brewing nationalism in East Turkestan. According to the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region De-Extremification Regulations, Section 2, Article 4, de-radicalization should adhere to the party's basic policy of religious work, continue towards sinicization of religion and rule of law, and actively guide the adaptation of religion to a socialist society. Pretty on the nose, if you ask me. In Section 2, Main Manifestations of Extremism, what is labeled as extremism is very vague. These manifestations of extremism include propagating and spreading extreme thoughts, interfering in the cultural and entertainment activities, rejecting public products and services such as radio and television, generalizing the concept of halal, expanding the concept of halal to other fields beyond halal food, wearing or forcing others to wear garments covering the face, i.e. hijab, those who exaggerate religious fanaticism with abnormal beards and names, not allowing children to receive national education or hindering the implementation of the national education system, intimidating or inducing others to boycott the enjoyment of national policies, publishing, printing, distributing, selling, producing, downloading, storing, copying, consulting, extracting, holding articles, publications, audio and video with extreme content, deliberately interfering with or undermining the implementation of the family planning policy, other extremist speech or behavior. This is very clearly an attempt to arbitrarily imprison people for expressing aspects of their religion. Keep note of that. This and the draconian surveillance system and so-called predictive policing is very much reminiscent of the heavy policing of black communities on the part of city police forces in the United States. When the allegations first came out, China first denied the existence of the camps, only to come out and run the de-extremification narrative. Alongside the indoctrination and internment of people for expressing Uighurness, there have also been credible reports of forced sterilization in a deliberate attempt to suppress the Uighur birth rate, which, mind you, meets the definition of genocide. So with all of this credible evidence, whistleblowers, leaks, and public official government documents, what do deniers and CCP apologists levy at these accusations? One's political views, while may play into the conclusion of a study, does not invalidate the entirety of Zen's findings, which are from the looks of it well-sourced and cited. People tend to hyperfixate on Zen's because he is very easy to dismiss because of his political views, especially since there are other academics who talk about discrimination against Uyghurs in China, like Timothy Gross, Darren Byler, and Drew Gladney. Here is a map of the Belt and Road Initiative, and here are countries that explicitly defend China with regards to Xinjiang. See a conflict of interest here. In addition to that being very much irrelevant, it doesn't really matter what Muslim countries think of the mass detainment because I do not use that to determine the legitimacy of certain global events. Muslims are not a hive mind. Also, because we totally trust the government of Saudi Arabia. While there are mosques in China, there are also mosques in Myanmar, in which there has been a targeted campaign of brutal sectarian violence against Muslims on the part of the state. Let's not ignore the fact that these mosques are under heavy surveillance. This, alongside the fact that China has made attempts to assimilate the religious by mandating portraits of Mao and Xi be placed in places of worship. This is reminiscent of my conversations with neo-Nazis who obsess over the 6 million number. The exact number of people in these detention facilities are not known. However, there are multiple different estimates. There is the Chinese Human Rights Defenders Estimate, which is an organization that has ties to the State Department. They arrived by interviewing 8 people and multiplying it to reach a 1 million number, which, while it sounds like a black book of communism moment, there are other close estimates. There is another source from the Chinese leak that was then published in the newspaper Istiklal, which was later confirmed by Newsweek Japan. It was found that approximately 800,000 people had been detained from 68 counties. The BBC got together some architects and prison design experts and looked at the satellite images and determined that there were likely 44 camps in Xinjiang. They then estimated that anywhere from 11,000 to 130,000 people could be held in these camps. If we were to hold the 1 million estimate to be true, there would be approximately 22,000 detainees in each camp. According to the AFP, the Vocational Education Bureau in Hotan County ordered 194,000 Chinese language practice books and 11,310 pairs of shoes. This is for one camp alone, mind you. Like I said, the obsession over the 1 million numbers very much emulates the narrative spread by Holocaust deniers, because the ambiguity surrounding the issue allows for doubt, denial, and justification. And it's especially funny since the Chinese government hasn't come out with an exact number themselves. To me, at least, it wouldn't really matter since it would be just as abhorrent if the state was interning 500,000 people. For every hot button issue, there will be liars and grifters and some false accusations. I personally recall a time where a friend of mine was sharing a post which stated that 6 million people have died in the Chinese internment camps, which is wrong. Despite this, there are many eyewitness testimonies, some of which received no views on social media, which details the personal experiences of many people. Bad Empanada put together a thread of these, which you can find in the description. As stated earlier, people are being detained for things as basic as having a beard. These camps are very clearly designed to erase Uighur culture by labeling absolutely anything intrinsic to Uighur culture as extremism that must be removed. It's especially hard to trust the CCP narrative as they have lied and backpedaled on the vocational schools narrative. This is evident by the leak of the Caracas list, which details who is being imprisoned and why, and has been corroborated by multiple whistleblowers. The Caracas list, named after the county of Caracas in Hotan Prefecture, represents the most recently leaked government document from Xinjiang. over 137 pages, 667 data rows, and the personal details of over 3,000 Uyghurs. This list clearly shows that these anti-extremist regulations are a systematic attempt to repress Uyghur culture, as many of these people have been imprisoned for these arbitrary laws and not extremism. Once taking a look at the conditions of these camps, you'll find that the mistreatment of detainees shows that these camps are not for the intended purpose of de-radicalization. Leaked documents from the New York Times found out how the camps were operated. For example, the document states that the students are not allowed to leave the schools and that the behavior of the students could either shorten or extend the detention of their relatives. They also advised them that the camps were for their own good. I don't think that's how vocational schools operate, and I don't think this is how vocational schools are meant to operate. Many people like to deny the authenticity of these leaks by stating that there were grammatical inconsistencies. That's kind of dumb, especially since Chinese grammar is very flexible, unlike other languages. Funnier still, however, is that the CCP does not deny the authenticity of the leaks. According to the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, in the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. As such, A. Killing members of the group. B. Causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. C. Deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. D. Imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. E. Forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. A study put out by Adrian Zenz seems to show that the sterilization and forced abortions are in fact being applied exclusively to Uyghurs. And no, saying he's a religious fundamentalist is not an argument. So this can be called a genocide by every definition, even the UN definition. And it's these policies that have directly led to the drop in Uyghur birth rates. According to the Karakash list, some people have been detained for, quote-unquote, having too many children. This and the accusation that this is comparable to the white genocide conspiracy theory is a very dishonest argument. For something like that to be explained by poverty reduction and not a very deliberate attempt to suppress Uyghur birth rates and to replace them with Han migrants, it would need to happen over the course of over 1 year. According to Ho Tan City's family planning documents, it instructs them to make sure that the birth rate in 2019 should not exceed the birth rate in 2018, showing that they are deliberately suppressing birth rates. Secondly, this is in no way comparable to the white genocide conspiracy theory, because the premise of the white genocide is that the Jews are plotting to replace the white countries with browns, as opposed to the Uighur genocide, which is a targeted campaign of state violence against a minority group in the attempt to erase their culture intentionally. I think it's okay to maintain a healthy degree of skepticism, especially with regards to Western media. However, this isn't it. With the numerous amounts of leaks, video evidence, data and statements put out by the Chinese government, as well as the guilty conscience on the part of the CCP, clearly points to this not being a manufactured narrative. So I guess you're now armed with the tools to fight denialism wherever you see it. Like all current events, new stuff comes out, so I'll probably make a document with some citations in it if I ever get to it. For now, I've linked some stuff to read in the description, as well as a Rational Wiki article which also debunks other talking points. Anyways, thanks for watching. I want to focus my content a little bit more. I plan to do a video about Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, as well as looking at the former dictator of Uganda, Idi Amin. The nice thing about the last one is that I live here, so I can get copyright-free videos. You can follow me on Twitter, link is in description, and I guess I'll see you next video.